p.m. on a cold day in San Francisco, and a woman is standing at the corner waiting to cross the street to get a cup of coffee. She looks behind her shoulder and she sees a young man standing behind her with his backpack on, his hoodie up, and a couple of pastel-colored blankets draped over his back. And she thinks to herself, I wonder if everything he owns is on his back. Before getting a cup of coffee, she goes over to the young man and she says, "Can I buy you a cup of coffee?" He says, "No, thank you. I don't need a cup of coffee," and looks back down at his hands. She was a bit offended, shrugs her shoulders, and goes to walk away. But rather, she turns back to him and she says, "So what do you need?" And he holds up his hand and he shows her his phone and says, "I have less than 1% charge on my phone, nowhere to charge it, and I turned in 2 job applications today. I'm sure somebody is going to call me back by the end of the day." It's quite clear he did not need a cup of coffee. So off they went to take care of what he did need. At a national sales conference, a woman gets an award for the top sales production in the country, top 1%. The next morning at a regional sales meeting, she goes to raise her hand to ask a question and then quickly lowers it, hoping not to be seen. But it's too late. The facilitator sees her, calls on her, and says, "Yes, how can I help you?" She waves him off and shrinks back in her chair and says, "No, no, no, never mind." Her colleagues look at her and laugh, say, "There you go again. Oh, never mind." You see, that was her nickname. Oh, never mind. She could sell at the top percentile in the country, but lacked the courage to ask a question in a room full of peers. Both those stories are real. And in both those stories, that's me, the anti-hero of my own life. In the first story, I have great intentions and misguided charity. In the second story, I have all the potential in the world, but lack the courage to ask a question in a room full of peers. Does that sound familiar? You know, a couple of years ago, I was listening to a friend of mine share her story, and it was a beautiful story. I think it was beautiful because I only got like 1/3 in, and then she just kind of hijacked me. She gets to this partner in her story, and she says, "I had to learn to be a better asker." And I thought to myself, is that a thing? Is that a thing, being a better asker? Now, her story went on and talked about the beautiful things that started unfolding in her life, but I was stuck on that better asker piece. And I started thinking about all the times that I don't ask when I lack clarity, or all the things I assume when I think somebody needs something, but I don't respect them enough to ask them what they need. And I thought, well, what is this better asker thing? So I went on a crusade to dare to be a better asker. You see, you may think like me, like, what's the big deal? But when I started studying that, I started to understand that we're born curious. It's our nature. It's part of our design. It's the way children find their way in the world. It's the way that we come to understand what's our place and how to understand things. I mean, shucks, children between the ages of 2 to 4 ask 40,000 questions, according to Paul Harris, a Harvard psychologist, child psychologist. Now that's about 100 questions a day. That's amazing and exhausting. But if you can get through that, then your kids you go off to kindergarten. And by the time we get into kindergarten, the questions begin to taper off because we find our preferences and our patterns. And it's at that time that we learn where our cubby is, where to sit, when it's nap time. And we start to understand that the system is meant to protect us and to keep us in line. Well, that curiosity starts giving up because we start to notice that what really starts getting applauded are achievements and not necessarily questions. By the time we get to junior high school, adolescent years, and anybody who's gone through that, you know it like I do, the questions completely go underground. Because at that time, we've really gotten clear that if we don't know something, it may not be safe to ask. And if we lack clarity and we have a state of confusion, then we almost get overwhelmed with fear, and so we hide ourselves. So we shrink and conform rather than asking a question. Complacency takes the place of our curiosity for the sake of conformity. We do all this for the sake of fitting in. But you see, our world is expanding. We live, actually, the funny thing about this is we live in a world of infinite possibility. A world where, yes, anything is possible and nothing is certain. And in that uncertainty, status quos are being challenged, systems are being dismantled, and our lines and borders are becoming blurred and sometimes demolished. It is in times like this that our curiosity will serve us, and our dare to be a better asker can actually bring us in to a new understanding so that we can find our place in it once more. Now, NASA did a study in 2019 and observed through the Hubble Space Telescope that our universe, first of all, it's expanding, it's not contracting, so that's kind of good news, right? It's ever expansive. And it's also 68% dark energy, 27% dark matter, and less than 5% of light matter seen in form. So it's clear to me that there's a lot more that's unknown out there than there is that's known. But yet we limit ourselves to that 5% that we see and that we've conformed to for years without understanding that the more that we're looking for in life could just be one question away, that a curious mind can open a door beyond our current level of understanding. Einstein says that not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing. Could it have been that he knows that there's more to life than what we see? So here's my challenge. In a world of infinite possibilities, yes, there's multitudes of things that you can do, but I'm going to leave you with 3 of my core ideas that I think are worth sharing. The first one is, I want you to consider the idea that you may be wrong. I know, not all the time, and maybe not even really often, but in those times when you become insistent and combative, and maybe even a little self-righteous, pause for just a moment and think to yourself, I may be wrong. And then ask yourself, for a room full of people, is there another way to look at this? Is there another way to think about this? Is there another way to move forward? There is freedom in not insisting that you're right. And that freedom opens you up to that possibility that's beyond your current level of understanding. You see, when we take our unexamined belief systems and hold tight to them, we create the breeding ground for biases. And it's in that space that we can bring our curiosity into and open up. Second thing I would consider is to examine some of your habits and introduce new rituals. Now, I'm not talking about the biggies. You know, I'm not talking about the biggies. I want you to examine some of your everyday habits, some of the things that you do mindlessly, some of the things that you might even be doing because you felt obligated to from some outdated obligation that doesn't even exist anymore. So when we introduce our curiosity and our imagination into our everyday world, it expands. It gets bigger. All of a sudden, we're doing more adventurous things. Now start slow. I insist that you start slow. Maybe a new route to work. That'll be good. A new menu item. That'll be fun, right? A new dance move, you know. Get your energy in there. A new adventure, or even a new way to enter into your home after a hard day's work. A new way to greet your loved ones. Because when we start examining our habits and initiating some new innovative rituals, our life just takes on a whole nother depth. One idea, one thought, one experience at a time can change everything. And lastly, I want you to consider, no, I don't want you to consider this. I actually want you to make a commitment to unleash your curiosity into the world. You know those moments when you wake up and doubt and anxiety are maybe the first thing on your mind, and all those redundant negative thoughts, they come to party in your head? Or what about those worst case scenarios that are like low-hanging fruit? What if you take that opportunity to unleash your curiosity into the world? What if in that moment you take the time to play the what if and wouldn't it be wonderful game? If only for a minute. Because you see, when we start doing that, our world starts becoming extremely animated. Wisdom begins in wonder, says Socrates. And wouldn't it be wonderful to be more surrounded by wisdom in this day and age? So I have an invitation for you. I want you to consider the idea that you may be wrong on occasion. Examine some of your habits and rituals and commit to unleashing your curiosity in the world. Because when you dare to be a better asker, instead of being the anti-hero of your own life who shrinks and conforms so that her silence masks her, dare to be the hero or heroine that your world so desperately needs. Thank you.